What really happens when cruise ships retire? Those billion-dollar floating cities don't just vanish. They take one final secret voyage that almost no passenger ever hears about. In this video, I'll show you where these ships actually go, who profits from their disappearance, and how parts of them quietly live on for decades after their last sail away. Because when the time comes to die, it isn't the ocean that decides their fate, it's the money. And once you see what happens behind the scenes, you'll never look at a cruise ship the same way again. The rise of the billion-dollar giants. The cruise ship industry is built on spectacle. Each new vessel has to be bigger, flashier, and smarter than the last. But few people ever stop to think about the end of that story. What happens when a billion-dollar ship quietly sails its final route? These ships aren't like cars you can trade in or planes you can park. They're floating cities with power grids, water plants, and entire neighborhoods on board. Building one takes nearly 5 years, hundreds of engineers, and enough steel to raise a skyscraper. The numbers are staggering. Engines the size of houses, propellers taller than people, and interior spaces that can hold several football fields. When it launches, a ship represents the height of modern design and marketing pride. Every inch is planned for profit and comfort. The power systems are designed to feed thousands of cabins, the lighting balanced to mimic sunlight at sea, and the plumbing network rivals that of a small town. The luxury layers come last. The grand atriums, marble staircases, and glass pools that make the headlines. A single chandelier can cost more than a house. It's all part of a brand's promise that this floating palace will sail safely and look timeless for 25 to 30 years. But time at sea is a quiet enemy. Salt air, constant vibration, and fuel costs slowly erode the business model no matter how glamorous the brochures stay. A ship's final decade is its golden era. Guests fill the cabins, the restaurants buzz, and marketing pushes its name like a celebrity. But after a few years, the balance shifts. Every system that once shined needs maintenance. Engines overhauled, cabins refurbished, technology replaced, and those costs climb fast. Regulations change too. New emissions rules, cleaner fuel requirements, and modern safety standards mean older ships need expensive upgrades just to stay compliant. And sometimes it's cheaper for a cruise line to build a new ship than to retrofit an old one. That's why the industry quietly keeps a calendar for retirement. Somewhere behind the glossy ads, each ship has an expiration date. When it hits that point, the cruise line faces a choice: sell it, refit it, or scrap it. COVID accelerated that timeline brutally. With ports closed and fleets docked, dozens of ships were sold for parts long before their time. Crews said tearful goodbyes. Captains made final announcements, and vessels that once symbolized freedom ended their lives anchored in still water. That's where our story really begins. The moment when a billion-dollar icon stops being a ship and starts becoming someone else's opportunity. Why cruise ships retire? Every ship reaches a point where pride meets math. What once felt like endless luxury begins to drag under its own weight, literally and financially. Cruise ships are built to last about 25 to 30 years, but longevity on paper doesn't always match profitability at sea. Maintenance climbs every year. Steel corrodes, engines need overhauls, and interiors that once gleamed with polished brass start showing wear that guests immediately notice. Each repair takes the ship out of service, which means lost revenue. The same voyage that once filled every cabin now costs twice as much to run. Technology moves faster than ship design. When new vessels launch with advanced waste systems, smart cabins, and cleaner engines, older ships suddenly look and sound outdated. Passengers don't want to pay luxury prices to hear the walls vibrate or smell old carpet. Image matters in cruising, and companies guard it fiercely. If a ship begins to feel behind the times, it quietly disappears from the front page of the brochure. It's replaced by the next world's largest or most sustainable ship. phrases that sell cabins far better than refurbished. Then there's fuel. Older engines burn heavier oils that are now restricted in many ports. New environmental laws require expensive exhaust scrubbers or cleaner fuels that these ships weren't built to handle. Retrofitting one can cost hundreds of millions, and even then, efficiency rarely matches that of newer models. For an accountant looking at spreadsheets, the decision starts to look simple. Retire the older ship and put the money into a new flagship that markets itself. But for the people who sail them, retirement feels nothing like a business decision. Crews often spend years aboard the same vessel. It becomes their home, their rhythm, their identity. When a ship's final voyage is announced, the mood changes. Decorations stay up, but the laughter softens. The captain gives one last address over the intercom. Crew members gather at the rail to watch the shoreline fade, knowing this time they won't be back. During the pandemic, this cycle sped up brutally. With fleets grounded and no passengers for months, companies had to cut costs fast. Dozens of ships were sold or scrapped years early. Some never even said goodbye to their crews. They were transferred, deactivated, and sold within weeks. And when that happens, there's no ceremony, no farewell voyage, just a coded email, a change of flag, and a route plotted quietly toward the horizon, toward a place most travelers never hear about. The secret sail. When a cruise ship retires, it doesn't end with a public send-off. There's no announcement, no press release, and certainly no farewell party. Instead, the process begins with a few discreet messages exchanged between brokers and buyers. Ship sales happen behind closed doors, often through sealed bids handled by small maritime firms that specialize in moving vessels from one owner to another. On paper, it's just a transaction. In reality, it marks the beginning of the ship's final voyage. These brokers speak a quiet language of tonnage, scrap value, and steel grade. They circulate coded listings that reveal just enough: age, length, condition, and the ports it can still reach. Buyers include everything from startup cruise lines hoping for a bargain to scrapyard operators who know exactly what a ship's hull will yield when cut apart. Once the winning bid comes in, the ship changes flags, usually to a country with looser regulations and lower fees. This process, called reflagging, is what lets the ship move freely to its last destination without drawing attention. On deck, life appears normal. The crew might not even know what's happening until the final days. Routine maintenance continues, cabins stay tidy, and the ship keeps up appearances for a few remaining charter voyages. But beneath the surface, the systems are being shut down one by one. Casino cash pulled, bars emptied, safes sealed, electronics logged and stripped. Each step brings it closer to a quiet port where its registration will be surrendered. When it's finally ready, the ship departs under a new name and flag. It doesn't follow a tourist route this time. It moves on a one-way path. Watch its tracking signal online, and you'll see the course change slowly toward the eastern Mediterranean, the Red Sea, or the Bay of Bengal. Turkey, India, and Bangladesh are the world's final ports for these giants. And somewhere in those waters, the ship's AIS signal, the tracker that marks its position, will go dark. There's no ceremony at that moment, no captain's speech or final salute, just silence and salt air as a billion-dollar vessel glides toward the shore that will unmake it. If this behind-the-scenes view helps you cruise smarter, tap like and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel and tells me to keep making deep dive stories like this. Now back to the yard. Up next, where those parts are made: Aliaga, Turkey, steel on sand, cranes and torches, and the uneasy balance between recovery and ruin. Where $1 billion ships go to die. The beach at Aliaga, Turkey looks calm from a distance. Blue water glinting under a soft haze, gulls wheeling overhead, and the faint outline of hills beyond a line of massive silhouettes. But as you draw closer, the quiet turns into a harsh symphony of sound. The air fills with the hiss of cutting torches, the metallic groan of steel under strain, and the rhythmic crash of waves against hulls streaked with rust. This is where billion-dollar cruise ships come to die, where floating cities meet the shore and are unmade piece by piece. Every arrival follows a ritual. The ship approaches under its own power, guided by local pilots who have performed this maneuver hundreds of times. Then, at the last moment, the throttle opens. The ship lunges forward in a controlled surge and dives itself onto the sand, steel scraping into earth until it shudders to a halt. Engines are shut off for the final time. Within hours, workers climb aboard, their tools sparking against walls that once held restaurants, spas, and staterooms with private balconies. Everything has value here. Copper wiring is stripped and coiled. Air conditioning ducts are sawed apart. Kitchens are emptied of steel counters and cookware. Even art, signage, and flooring are cataloged and sold. The hull, now a hollow skeleton, is sliced into sections and hoisted by cranes onto waiting trucks. A single cruise ship can yield more than 40,000 tons of reusable material, enough steel to build several mid-rise buildings. But the work is perilous. Oil residues and toxic paints seep from tanks and bulkheads. Asbestos lingers in old insulation. There are few safety barriers, and every movement carries risk. The industry calls this green recycling. But critics argue that the beaches of Aliaga, Along, and Chittagong bear the stains of progress, the runoff, the fumes, and the lives shortened by exposure. To the people who work here, though, it's survival. Entire towns depend on this trade. Fathers teach sons to cut steel the way others teach farming or fishing. They turn luxury into livelihood, one spark at a time. From afar, you can still see the outline of what once was. A proud bow, a faded logo, the ghost of grandeur. But by the next season, it will be gone, melted into the bones of new buildings and ships yet to sail. Once symbolized wealth and wonder ends as scrap, an empire reduced to sparks. Yet even here, among the wreckage, the story refuses to end. The afterlife of a cruise ship. When the cutting torches finally go dark, the afterlife begins. Not in silence, but in the clatter of forklifts and the shuffle of workers sorting through what's left. A cruise ship never truly disappears. It just stops being a ship. Every ton of steel, every polished surface, every bit of machinery is destined for somewhere else. The thousands of tons of metal stripped from shipyards like Aliaga are melted down and reborn as skyscraper beams, bridges, or even the hulls of new cargo ships. Copper wiring is bundled and sold into the circuits of future cities. Brass railings, decorative trims, and light fixtures are polished to a shine and resold to builders who may never realize they once lined the staircases of a grand ocean liner. Furniture takes a softer path. Hotel owners across Europe and Asia buy container loads of salvaged chairs, mirrors, and tables pulled straight from cabins and dining rooms. You can walk inside a seaside cafe in Greece and sip coffee at a table that once sailed the Caribbean. A boutique hotel in Croatia might use wall lamps from a retired royal-class liner. Even lifeboats find new identities, converted into small ferries, rescue crafts, or harbor patrol vessels. In one documented case, an entire set of theater seats from a decommissioned cruise ship ended up in a local cinema, still upholstered in ocean blue velvet. Engines and generators are sold to industrial buyers or retrofitted into smaller cargo ships. Navigation equipment, radars, gyro compasses, and autopilot systems find its way into training centers or research vessels. Artwork that once filled lounges and corridors is auctioned off to collectors. Some pieces resurface in private homes or galleries. Others vanish completely, their provenance lost to time. It's a strange kind of immortality, scattered and untraceable. The ocean keeps almost nothing, only a few barnacled fragments that slip beneath the waves. Everything else is sold, reused, or reborn until only the memories remain. That's the hidden genius of the cruise industry. It wastes almost nothing, even in death. But every rebirth carries a price. Each ton of recycled steel means more fuel burned and more exposure for workers handling toxic residue. For every chandelier that glitters in a new home, another gallon of oil stains the shore. The beauty endures, but so does the burden. And that's where the story widens, from what these ships become to what they leave behind for the world to carry. The cost and consequence. Every ship that ends its life on a breaking beach leaves more than metal behind. Beneath the surface beauty of recycling lies a trail of pollution that's harder to melt down. When workers cut open old hulls, what seeps out isn't just salt water. It's fuel oil trapped in tanks, asbestos from insulation, lead-based paint, and chemical coatings that once made ships gleam. These toxins spill into sand and sea, staining coastlines that depend on fishing for survival. Western countries call their dismantling yards green recycling centers. They use dry docks, cranes, and closed drainage systems to contain the waste. But those yards are expensive, and many companies quietly choose cheaper options across South Asia, where environmental laws are thinner and labor costs lower. Places like Chittagong in Bangladesh or Long in India can break ships faster and for a fraction of the price. The trade-off is clear: higher output, lower safety, and almost no protection for the coastline. From above, you can see the difference. Satellite images show bright strips of beach widening year after year as the ship graveyards expand. Rows of hulls appear and vanish like slow-motion tides. To the untrained eye, it looks like progress. More work, more business. But zoom in, and you'll see oil slicks spreading into turquoise water and workers knee-deep in sludge. Every part of the process carries risk. Breathing dust from stripped paint, handling fuel-soaked steel, cutting without protective gear. It all shortens lives. Yet for thousands of families, this is steady income. A single cruise ship's dismantling can feed an entire town for months. It's the price of modern travel shifted to a different shore. The irony is hard to miss. Ships that once symbolized freedom and leisure now bring hazard and hardship to the people who take them apart. What began as an engineering triumph ends as an environmental dilemma. A reminder that no matter how well we build, the ocean remembers everything we leave behind. But change is coming. Designers and governments are starting to plan not just how ships sail, but how they die. And that small shift may rewrite the final chapter of every voyage still to come. The future of cruise ship recycling. For decades, shipbuilding was a race toward excess. Each generation chasing new record-breaking size, higher decks, and flashier attractions. But that era is beginning to shift. The next wave of cruise design isn't about spectacle, it's about survival. Shipbuilders are now asked a new kind of question. Not just how will this ship live, but how will it die? Across Europe and Japan, shipyards are testing modular construction techniques that allow entire sections to be detached, repaired, or replaced without cutting through the hull. It's the same principle used in modern aviation. Replace, don't rebuild. Instead of tearing a ship apart piece by piece decades later, modular components can be swapped mid-life, keeping the structure sound and making eventual dismantling far easier. This approach doesn't just extend the vessel's service life, it turns shipbuilding into an ongoing cycle rather than a one-time creation. Engineers are also rethinking materials. New alloys are designed to separate cleanly from insulation. Electrical wiring is color-coded and labeled for recycling. Composite panels can burn safely or biodegrade rather than release toxins. Each design tweak moves the industry closer to a closed loop, where waste becomes resource instead of residue. In the near future, every new ship may carry a green passport, a digital record that lists every material used from keel to radar mast. Decades later, when recyclers receive the vessel, they'll know exactly what's inside and how to dismantle it safely. No more guesswork, no hidden hazards. Transparency replaces uncertainty, and efficiency replaces risk. Meanwhile, the scrapyards themselves are changing. In Northern Europe, automated recycling facilities already use robotic cranes guided by sensors and AI, mapping to cut and sort steel without a worker stepping inside. These clean yards recover more material with fewer injuries and almost zero chemical runoff. The European Union has doubled down, mandating that any EU-flagged ship must be recycled at an approved green yard. It's a rule that quietly reshapes the entire design pipeline. Ships are now built with their end in mind from day one. Even propulsion is evolving. LNG, methanol, and hybrid systems drastically reduce emissions, making future scrapping cleaner and less dangerous. The vision is circular. Vessels that are born, live, and die without poisoning the sea that carried them. It's an optimistic horizon. Maybe the next billion-dollar cruise ship will be the first to end gracefully, taken apart cleanly, its materials reborn without harm. And when that day comes, the final voyage won't be about decay or loss. It'll be about renewal. Because if the ocean teaches one lasting truth, it's this: everything that returns to it should do so with respect. If this video helped you see cruising in a new light, tap like. It tells the algorithm you value smarter travel stories. Subscribe for more behind-the-scenes looks at how the cruise world really works, from shipbuilding to the secrets most passengers never hear. And when you're ready to keep exploring, watch the next video on your screen. Your voyage is just beginning.